Hiya, I'm Marcus from All Ages Airsoft, and today we've got another gun repair in. Today it's just a common or garden Cyma generic AK-47 two-tone that has come in, pellets rolling out the barrel. I suspect I already know what the fault is here, but we're just going to run a quick check and find out. So first thing, remove the butt plate and connect a 7.4 volt battery. Turn it up on its side so I can look down into the feed tube. Use my torch. No sound of compression, but as I can see, nozzle is moving. That tells me that the butt end of the piston has gone south for the winter, because the gears are turning, because the taper plate's moving. So that can more or less confirms what I already know. So we're going to go straight into the breakdown. So first thing, we'll take the grip off. Okay, so we're going to take the stock off, just to make life a little bit easier. This is a classic Marui, old school Marui clone. You've basically got to strip everything. So what I'm going to do, make my life a little bit easier and do all the screws this way now. These are the screws that hold the barrel trunnion assembly in place, which we will remove in a few minutes. With a lot of the more modern ones, you don't have this. Right. The top cover. And remove that. Right, there's a tiny little screw here, and there will also be another tiny little screw attached to the hop arm adjuster, which is here, which we're going to use my little screwdriver set for. Whatever you do, don't lose it, because it is a pain in the butt to adjust the hop arm without that. Take out that little screw. This whole unit slides off. There we go. Now, and watch out for the little spring that sits just in here as part of the return for that, and also watch out for these screws like this one that has decided it doesn't want to be part of the gun. Now while I'm here, there is a round stuck down the barrel, so I am going to very quickly find out if there is. That's not a good sign. That is actually jammed down the barrel. So that could mean we've got a dodgy hop rubber. Normally pellets, that would be more than likely the cause why the piston went south. But we will check that when we get a bit further into it. Always cram so much wiring into these. There's no real need to. What I've got to do is push the wiring through because they've got a connection in here, which is, in this particular occasion, jammed right against the inside of the stock. Which, got it. There we go. And they always put tape over them, which is relatively sensible. But it's a mini Tamiya and it always becomes a problem. Right, next bit, we've got to get this. That is just a little metal tin cover. Nothing more, nothing less. So, I need to pop a thin screwdriver underneath and pop it off. Then, out comes that. You will have a little brass shim and the actuator for the, the selector, which is behind here. I'm also going to just remove these. Being an AK, it is quite an involved strip down, but on the plus side, we can test the gearbox without having to put it in the gun, which is always a big bonus. So that's through. Right, I'm going to remove the motor just because, one, it makes it a lot easier for me, and two, it is fairly tight to get it out without removing the motor. Sometimes these screws come out nice and easy, sometimes they don't. And then pop your positive and negative off. Quick smell. Make sure everything's free. If it smells burnt, then you've probably got a problem as well on your motor. Now, the whole gearbox will pop out like so. Right, here we are, a classic version 3 gearbox. That's part of your selector assembly, which will have to be timed on. Pretty typical, horrible Chinese style Loctite. We've got a cover here. Sometimes you have to pop off. There we are. There we go. All that's to do is to stop grease being flung out of the gearbox and hitting your finger. If you can see, this section of the gearbox is completely open, whereas on a version 2 it isn't. Right, now sometimes you can get away with pushing this, sometimes. No, we're not going to be that lucky, so I am going to use a pin punch. And we hold it. Doesn't take much force. That slides off, and that just stops. That's your backup to stop if your screws, for whatever reason, have failed. That is there to stop that happening. And the main gearbox screws. Sometimes they don't want to come out, so the easiest option is use your finger, put a little bit of pressure to one side and undo it, and that normally allows them to come out quite nicely. Right, now at the moment I'm assuming the piston is short, so we're not overly concerned about decocking it. If we were concerned, I'd have this tool that I custom ground, and all I would do is pop this in and just release the spring tension. So then you haven't got the piston halfway back here. You open the gearbox and the spring goes somewhere in that direction, and most of the gearbox ends up all over the room. Now I'm gonna prise it up a little bit, get a screwdriver in, lift up and remove the spring. So, and it has destroyed 3 teeth. Now, I will hazard a guess here. My suspicion is the jam we've got down the barrel has caused that. Now, what happens? This is an electric system. So, if I turn this round, motor comes in here, this gear spins, spinning this gear, spinning this gear. Now, if I remove this, and I also just decouple, come on, out you come, there we go. Right, so what will essentially happen in the gun? That sits in there when it's in the unfired position. And what happens? The gear starts to turn, pulling the taper plate back, which pulls the nozzle back to roughly this position, where if everything's doing what it should be doing, it will pick up the piston, start pulling the piston back. And at the moment, the gear's slipping. At about that position, the taper plate is under spring tension and it moves back forward. The gear continues to turn until bang. This gear has got 2 sets of gears on it, one half of which is missing, and it's the half set that picks up the piston. So the second you've gone past that position, there's no teeth holding it, bang, piston goes forward under spring tension, air goes down the barrel, pushing pellet down the barrel. Now, what happens? This is what I call a single metal tooth piston. We have one tooth here that is metal. Everything else on this piston is polymer. Now, if you can see here, we have gradually, load of teeth missing here, but it's gradually the teeth are getting fuller. That's telling me there was a jam down the barrel. So what's happened? A pellet has got jammed here. The piston and the gearbox do not know this. All they're concerned with, because your finger's still jammed on the trigger, hang on, somebody... Right, so what happens is you get the pellet jams in here, either down the barrel if it's a misshapen BB, used to happen a lot back in the day, or in the hot rubber. Sometimes the hot rubber curls itself over into the barrel, and that can cause a jam. So what happens is, instead of this going straight down like that, it sort of jams and does that and moves more slowly. But the gears don't know that. So instead of the gears picking up here, they'll try and pick up here. And eventually what happens is you have this, where basically you munch the gears out. Now, we're going to fit a full metal toothed piston. That, if you've got an underlying problem, say the barrel, all you're going to do, you will then probably do the gears or damage even further. So we're going to now check the barrel. So I have an unjamming rod. Right, that's not a good sign to start with. There's at least one pellet jammed here. So what we're going to do... Jesus. And there is the problem. That's the culprit. Okay. What on earth? Hang on, let's have a look. Right. Well, that is a piece of very thin paper or a label, but you can see where it's jammed and gone down the barrel. Good. Right, well, that is the fault. I'm now going to check the barrel. Remarkably, the barrel doesn't look too bad. I'm going to grab one of the other BBs and just check to see. Yeah, that's fine. Right, so that appears to have been why this had eaten a piston. It had a jam, a very nasty jam, as you can see by all the pellets that are left on my workbench. So now it is going to be a case of just putting this back together. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pop that back on there, looking at what the other side of the gearbox. This has come off of there. Now the other thing I'm going to very quickly check is just turn everything, just to make sure we haven't dropped a tooth. And by the looks of it, we haven't. I'm going to put a few drops of lube on here. I'm not a great fan of using grease on these things. I do personally prefer to use some form of oil of some description. For certain things I use grease. I don't over oil it, but I prefer to have a little bit okay. Right. So let's get that. Right. Now, the other thing I'm going to very quickly check is that changing the piston head hasn't caused any problems with compression. We've got, as you can see, a full chamber, i.e. by that I mean there is no hole in the chamber, which is for volume. Right. We have got a bit of an air leak, but this gun did chrono all right, and I suspect the air leak will be there. This isn't a gaming gun. This is used for a bit of target shooting in the back garden. So we're gonna start getting it back together. There we go, set that in. Right, now I'm going to use contact surfaces, that'll do. Right, a little bit of oil here. And a small amount just over the teeth, just to help it. Right. Hook that. Okay. Right, so now I'm going to make sure the piston's sitting where it needs to be. I am going to put the anti-reversal latch in like so, but I'm going to use an Ace-Tech very, very handy tool. All it does, there we go, it just holds the anti-reversal latch into place. Other thing I'm going to very quickly do is just check for crap like that, and I've just noticed some. Yeah, a little bit here, and this is what's left of the piston. Right, so I put my little special tool in that holds the anti-reversal latch in place. Just going to put a little bit of lube and that. Then I am going to hold this in position. Come on, in you go. There we go. Right. And I will put the spring and spring guide back in, holding it. This is where things start getting interesting. Come on, in you come. There we go. Right. Then it is a simple case of you have to wiggle that around to get that where it needs to sit. I need one of those. There we go. Right. Pull that out. Something's not quite, there you go. Right, now we've got a problem here, and that to me looks like the piston is not sitting where we need it. So sometimes you can just come on. That's not going to go. We're going to have to take it out again. Right, so let's try this again. Make sure the bush is in where I want it. Where the fuck did I just... Oh, there it is. Right, that's okay. There we go. And slide this back on. Right. There you go. That's on. Right. So now I always, yep, trigger works okay. And the taper plate spring is engaged and doing what we want it to do. So now we'll start getting all the other little screws, which are here, back in. Long one, short one, and very short one. There should be. There it is. Right, now, because this is an AK, we can pop in the motor just as a temporary and see if it's actually going to work properly. Right. So, positive to positive, negative to negative. Right. And this is a 7.4 1200, which will do us perfectly fine. Right, that works all right. Slide the selector onto full auto. And the selector moving. Right, so it works. So what we're now going to do is remove the motor and get it all back together, and that's it. Take it on the range, give it a quick check and a chrono, inform the customer that somehow muck has got into their ammunition. And that's it. Put this little cover over like so. Now we have to time the safety and the selector. So the way I do it, this comes in from this side. Most AK selectors will only go in from one way. So we have it on the first tooth there. Put your thumb on it. Take the other part of the selector gear assembly and take the screw. Try not to get it cross-threaded because it will cause you problems. There we go, nice and tight. Then pull it down, you've got a ledge here. As you can see, you've got a ledge there. So, pull it down like that. It hits that ledge, it cannot go any further. At that stage, you take these two parts. This is the trigger block. The round hole goes to the top, the little oblong hole goes to the bottom and sits in here. And then this gear will sit on the first tooth like that, and the round hole will go through that oblong hole like so. And that is that essentially done. Next thing, let's get it into the receiver. So you've got to hold, put your thumb over it. Now you've also got to bear in mind that the wiring goes from the front, forward, up, over the front of the gearbox and then to the rear. So you've got to take that into account. It should sit something like that. Pop the motor wiring in. Take your stock bracket assembly, short piece to the top, slide that in. Make sure you don't get the wiring caught. There should be, like there is on this one, a little hole in the side where the wiring will sit down nicely, and that's that. Now, me personally, I do it this way. I will take my selector collar, which is this, and if you notice here, we've got two flats and a little keyway. You've got two flats on the inside of the selector and a keyway. So that's going to fit in on the top. Just make sure, take a few seconds to, doesn't take long normally. There you go, pop it in. And that's in nice and flush. You do need this, that's quite important, the little brass collar. That sits on like that, so. Then fit your selector, you'll notice you're in the safe position. And pop in the screw with the little anti-shake washer. That's quite important. Now, different variants of these have different ways they do it. Some of the better makes, this screw and washer is all one piece and you have to physically unscrew it. Whereas this one has a cap. There you go. Nice and tight. And then you take your little cover, which has got two ears on it, and just push it on like so. Okay, safety works. That will be full auto, that will be semi-auto. Some people have asked me, well, why do the Russians do it that way? And quite frankly, it's just because they didn't want to be like NATO. And it's the way Mikhail Kalashnikov designed it. So you can't argue with them. That's the way they've set them up. Right, which screws am I after? There we are. If you feel that the screw isn't going in properly, don't panic, back it out a bit, try it again, and normally you'll find it will go in nicely. Right, motor can now go back on, like so. This groove is actually there for the wiring to have somewhere to go. What you need to do, you'll also see a groove here. That's where for the wiring to go the negative side and keep it out of the way, like so. And then this doesn't always go in there, just sits like that. And then your grip will sit nicely over. The only thing you have to do is just make sure that that sits there like so. Then you need the correct screw, which is this one. A little round head Phillips. Sometimes they're flat heads, sometimes they're round heads. I've even come across Allen key ones. It really, as long as it fits, there you go, and that'll lock down nicely. So that's that section. Right, next we'll do the receiver, and as you can see, these screws have popped out. So one goes in there, one goes in. Come on, in you go. One goes in like so. And there's one more that goes in there. Now, what I'm going to do, just to make life a little bit easier for me, is hold that, there we go, and then slide it in. The nuts are in there, so you know you're not going to have a problem. Right, now with these, the long ones go to the front. So what I'm going to very quickly do is make sure, yep, that's actually in there. There we go. That's the whole barrel assembly in. Now, that little spring that I said we have to watch out for, that sits in this hole, just there. Then this goes back on. Now, what you've got to watch out for is it slots over the wiring, and you've got a little hook at the back here. So you need to just get it to sit in there. There we go. And push it forward. There we go. And then the tiny little screw holds that in place. You don't need to over tighten it. There we go. So that's now held in position. Then we need this little block. That sits on there. All right, hang on a minute. springs to come out. All right, can you kill it for a minute? See, that time. Right, so all we're going to do now, that's under spring tension. There we go. That's that. Next bit, hop arm, which is this screw and this arm. The arm itself, if you look, you've got a shoulder, two shoulders, one high, one low. So that denotes the high goes to the end of the hop arm. So it's got end closest to the end of the barrel. It is really, really fiddly. More or less where it needs to be. It shouldn't, I stress the word here, shouldn't touch the bolt or the fake bolt, and then pop the screw in. There we go, that's it. So that's that section completed. Next, we can get the stock back on. So I don't tend to put tape on these. I've never personally found the need to. Make sure you get it around the right way. I've found holding the wiring at the same time helps. Right, and then pop the three screws in. Try not to over tighten them, because again you can strip the thread and then you're in trouble. Sometimes people put a little drop of Loctite on them. You can do if you want to, it wouldn't do it any harm. Use blue, not red, otherwise you'll really struggle if you come to take it apart again. A little bit of history. The reason why you have this channel here and this little ledge here is when Marui first released this gun, it was only issued with the AK stick battery, which was a long, thin battery, and it sat in here. So that is that. Next video will be us testing it.